And welcome. It's Friday and we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So I hope everyone had a great week. I've had a very interesting week, as always, delivering LTA Coach Forums, delivered a psychology workshop for the LTA, did some coaching, did some good lessons, did a bad lesson as well, which I might talk about today. And yeah, just been unpacking lots of different things as well. Had a few conversations on Instagram and social media. So today I want to talk about a decision I've made this week. It's quite a big decision for a tennis coach to make, and it's why I've stopped using drills. And it's a bit crazy because I actually have 2 drill books on my website that you can buy. Quick plug for those 2 books. But I've been looking at sort of the impact of drills and what drills represent and why we use drills as tennis coaches. And even just a name, drills, you have to drill something into somebody for them to learn it. So I've made a decision this week to stop using the word drills, but also to stop using traditional drills. It's quite a big move for a tennis coach. You only have to go on Instagram and Facebook and look around, and everyone's showing drills. Everyone's saying this is a great drill, and yeah, use this drill of your players. But why are we obsessed with drills in games? And my thought process this week has been, well, what works for my players won't work for yours. What works for your players probably won't work for mine. And over the last couple of lives, we've been discussing why we isolate technique and why we isolate skill development, and in my opinion, why it makes no sense to isolate a dynamic sport like tennis and isolate it into basket drills and repetition, which we've looked at over the last few weeks. And that's what generally drills are, just high repetition, doing the same isolated skill over and over again to build muscle memory, to build confidence, to build the basics, which we discussed last week in the live recording. That sounds a bit of a weird one live, but I did record it and it did go out live. Like, high repetition is not perfect for tennis players. We need repetition without repetition. We need variation. We need variability. And a lot of tennis coaches drill, and they do, okay, let's work on the forehand cross court. So that's an example I've seen this week. So let's work on the forehand cross court. So how would a tennis coach develop the skill of the forehand cross court? They'll get a basket of balls. To be fair, the coach I was watching this week did feed from a cross court baseline position. Okay, at least that's a positive. They're not feeding from the middle of the court, which was one of my shorts this week. So at least they're feeding from a realistic position. And they just mass or block feed the forehand, and the player hits the forehand over and over again. And the coach gives some technical importance of how to improve the skill. That's a classic drill. That's an isolated drill. Other drills that I've seen this week, okay, let's rally up and down the half court. So in a squad session, lots of rallying down the half court. That's a drill. Rally cross court. That's a drill. So it's, again, what impact does that have on the player? So if we go back to the isolated drill where the coach is feeding single forehands cross court, yes, they're feeding from a realistic court position, perfect, but they're feeding from the same position over and over again. So in a match, if I'm rallying with you cross court, I'm not going to be making contact in the same position. The coach was also playing with their other hand. I'm not going to say if they're left or right-handed compared to the player. So their dominant hand was opposite to the player. So the angle of their forehand was different. So the angle of the ball isn't correct. Because in a match, if they go onto the other side, the coach is probably going to change direction on the inside. So that didn't make much sense. And the feed was just a neutral run-of-the-mill feed. Chopper grip, punched it into the midcourt. No spin. So is the player ever going to get that ball in a match? No. So once the player performs a skill 2 or 3 times, like, where's the skill development there? How's the player developing their perception? How are they reading the environment? How are they reading the situation when it's just given to them on a plate? How is that developing skill? Just think about it from a common sense point of view. Like, how is that developing any level of skill? So just think again, common sense. Why are we training something that they're never going to use in a match? Ever. Unless they get that exact ball. And there's a little bit of variation in the feeding because no one can feed in the same place. But guess what? You can't repeat the same action over and over again. The body just won't allow it. So there's a little bit of variation in the feed, but it's generally from the same position, the same angle, same speed, same height, and it's just mass blocked. And I talked about this last week. Okay, what impact does that have on the player? So why do coaches do it? So I've been thinking about this a lot this week. Okay, so why did I do it for so many years? One, it's really easy. It's so easy to set up. It's a controlled environment that I've set up. The player can make progress pretty quick because they're just doing one movement pattern. They're just doing one technique. Keep need to stop doing that word with a finger with technique. They're just doing one movement pattern over and over again. So of course they're going to improve the skill. They're improving that one movement pattern. We need multiple movement patterns in tennis. And there's a post out on the Facebook group this week. Like, if you think about every single position you can hit forehand from on a court, and then every single position you can hit that forehand into, we're talking like thousands of variations, possibly tens of thousands of different variations. But then we're just working on one variation over and over again. And that one variation we may get once in a match. We're never going to get it twice in a row. So it's an easy step for me. It's easy to develop that one skill over and over again. But like I just mentioned there, that one skill probably not going to have much of an impact in a match. The player grows in confidence really quickly. So that's a plus. So it's easy. I can control it. The player will improve. The player will grow in confidence. It also makes me look like I know what I'm doing. Yeah, so I can throw out loads of jargon, split step, C shape, unit turn, finish over your shoulder. Okay, so it looks like technically I know what I'm talking about. And the player is hitting the ball back into an unopposed position. The player's not being put under any challenge by the feed. And the ball's not coming back. So there's no cause and effect. So I could hit a shot and the coach says good, but we've no idea if it is good or not because we don't know the effect it has on an opponent. There's no point hitting the ball back in the midcourt and then I crush it down the line. So was it really that good? And because of the quick improvement, and yes, it develops confidence, and yes, it develops a single movement in a short space of time, it almost justifies people paying me money because the player is coming for you for progress and you can give them that quite quick. So it's almost like a drug in many regards. You're giving them that quick high, that quick boost of motivation and confidence. But the issue is, and we've talked about this in the streams before, like when you put them into an open situation or a match, they can't replicate the skill. It disappears. So all that hard work, all that repetition, all that shouting C shape and split step has disappeared very quickly. And it's interesting when that happens in lessons because I know in the past I've said stuff, especially with juniors. Oh, you're not focused now. You've had a really good lesson. We've worked on that for 40 minutes and you've not focused. You've not been able to transfer the skill we've been working on into the match court. That's your fault. It's actually not their fault. It's my fault. It's my fault because I've coached them in a really unimpactful way. And I've said that to players, and in hindsight now, sitting here recording this or filming this, like I feel really guilty because I've blamed players for that. I've had a go at players for not being able to transfer the skill into a more challenging situation. I've blamed them for either not concentrating or not focusing. I need to blame myself because I've coached them in a very traditional way that has very little impact on them, on their ability to play tennis. And for me, that's why coaches do it, because it's easy. And even this week, I was at a coach forum and I was talking to a coach, and we looked at quite a difficult practice design, which is my new word for drills. It's not my new word; it's a word that a lot of people in the constraint-led approach use them. So practice. So in the practice, because there's so many variables, the coach said to me, "Oh yeah, but it makes my job harder." I'm like, well, it's not really about if it makes your job harder. It's about if it makes the player better. And just that one phrase of yes, but it makes my job more difficult really sums up, I think, sometimes the attitude of coaches. Oh, I don't want to be hitting tennis balls for 8 hours in a row on a Saturday, 8 private lessons. I want to get the basket out and just feed it because I can't move around the court as much. Or it's too difficult for me to get around the court and hit in. It's too difficult for me to do this. And it's all about them. It's not about the player. It's not what's best for the player. It's what makes the coach's job easier. And I think that's another barrier. And I think coaches, yeah, I understand hitting 8 hours in is tough. I've done it. I do it. Then if you can't physically do it, don't do 8 lessons in a row. Or get people in to hit for you if you're getting to a stage where you can't get around the court as quick as you used to. I know I'm in that, starting to get towards that period. But don't make your life easier at the cost of the player. The other challenge as well, so that's why I think coaches drill. And I think that's why players drill as well, because players like that feeling. They like that feeling of, oh, I'm getting better. I'm I'm making more shots. I'm making more balls in court. Whereas if they play a match then it's uncomfortable. It's not that nice, easy environment. It's uncomfortable. You're losing. You're frustrated. It's not nice sometimes when you play points. So they like that nice, controlled environment. But then they get into a match court and they wonder why they struggle. And a few people have inboxed me over the last couple of weeks saying, okay, I'm really struggling with performance anxiety. I'm really struggling with transferring my skills from a practice court to a match court. And I'm like, well, you need to look at what you're doing on the practice court. Because if you're not practicing and under some challenge, then of course you're going to struggle in a match environment. Like, you can't go from a fluffy, nice, controlled environment to an absolute chaotic a chaotic battle zone. Like, it is a battle. It's a one-on-one combat. It's almost a fight. I get a great conversation this week on Facebook. Oh yeah, but boxers drill against a heavy bag and pads to develop their technique. No, they don't. Like, boxers learn how to box by fighting, by getting punched in the face. Like, you can throw a punch against a pad all you want, but as Bruce Lee once said, boards don't hit back. Until you're actually in a fight, you won't know how to throw a punch. And I've been in controlled combat fighting or mixed martial arts environments, and you can drill all you want until you actually get face to face with someone in a cage. You don't know how to throw a punch. You don't know how to take a punch. And again, great classic boxing quote. You don't know how to fight until you get punched in the face. You can have all the technique in the world on the pads until you get smacked on the chin and your eyes water and it hurts and you get dizzy and you have that fight or flight feeling. Technique then goes out the window. And there's a great podcast to listen to this week. It's about swimming coaches. And a swimming coach would say, sort of in a practice at an event or a gala, he would give very explicit instructions about a technique. And the players would warm up using that technique. But when the buzzer went the swimmer dives into the pool, he said the technique goes out the window because the pressure's on. And how often as tennis coaches do we go to competitions and tournaments and watch our players and we don't see what we've been teaching them? And then we go, oh yeah, we've been working on that, and they're just not doing it. Why? Because the challenge is there. There's internal and external pressure on the player, so they change how they play. And it was interesting, like in my younger days, you'd send players away for like a couple of weeks to go and compete, and they'll come back and the technique will be all over the place. And I'd have a go at them. Oh, we spent 12 weeks working on this technique. Let's get back in and fix it. Me not realizing they've just adapted and changed their technique because they've been playing under pressure. they've been playing under challenge, and they've probably been successful with it. And then I've had this mentality of, oh no, you have to do it this way. And on reflection of my younger self, that's bad coaching by me. Maybe I should go and watch them play tournaments, and whatever way they're moving and hitting the ball, if it's working, if it's efficient and effective, then go for it. Who am I to tell you what's right or wrong? So that's why I don't close basket drill no more. And we talked about last week about beginners and this whole idea of, oh yeah, beginners need to learn the stroke and fundamentals. Beginners need to learn how to play tennis. Tennis is not just a series of isolated shots. Again, shout out to one of the members of my coaching Facebook group who said, oh, well, I have 3 positions to serve from. I can't remember now, 15 positions to hit my forehand from. Well, you're quite limited there. Like, I serve from multiple positions. I serve to multiple areas with different amounts of spin and different amounts of speed. And I couldn't tell you how many different serves I've got, because it all depends on the environment and conditions. If it's sunny, my serve's different. If it's windy, if I'm playing indoor, my serve's different. If I'm playing outdoor, there's always variation. And this whole idea of tennis being so linear, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you get B. It just makes no sense. So I'm no longer basket drilling. I'm also moving away from like just hitting cross court. And like this week, there's an exercise that I see where, okay, you have to, and it was on a coach workshop that I did on psychology. And one of the coaches set up a drill. Okay, you have to go 2 cross 1 line, which is a classic drill. And I know a lot of pro players will use that drill. And it's a very common drill in the performance landscape, 2 cross 1 line. But my thinking around those type of drills now is, well, maybe you wouldn't want to go 2 cross 1 line. Maybe you go line straight away. Maybe you go 4 cross and then line, or maybe you go 1 cross drop shot. Like, it's not that formulaic. I don't understand why I've done those drills. Why would you rally to 50 cross court when you never do that in a match? It's repetition, it's rally threshold and all that stuff. Great if it's an isolated game. And even going back at the start of September, like, I did quite isolated, linear testing. Forehand cross, backhand cross, serve into a box. And I marked down the scores. That's the way I've always done it. But to give you an idea how my coaching's evolving, I'm sitting here now 6 weeks in, I'm thinking that's probably not the best way, because I'm isolating a skill, and is it really a true reflection of how good they are at tennis, how many shots they hit cross court? Because in a match, like, we're not seeing can they rally cross court for a minute. And yes, that might give me an idea of, okay, the rally threshold, but does it really matter in a match? Where's the perception skills there? Where's the decision making? Where's the freedom to explore and make mistakes if we're giving players a framework? And I understand that we don't want to give the players too many choices. And I talked about this last week. I think you got to be careful, because if you give players too many options, it's overwhelming. So that's why we use the constraint method, and we'll constrain the exercise, the environment, or the task to maybe only have a couple of options, not multiple options at the start. And then as the player develops a skill, we open it up a bit more, and they then have more decisions to make. So we're not quite completely isolating skill. I still want a degree of decision making and freedom, but I'd still have to work in realms of sort of movement cycles. Okay, can they move out to the backhand, and can they deal with certain shots in certain times? So I'm definitely moving away from that formulaic 2 cross 1 line, or you have to rally 4 cross and then play the point out. And I think a lot of my drills going forwards will be very much just tennis, serve, return, and then I'll put constraints on various things to try and develop certain areas, specifically in lessons. And a big decision I made this week when I was thinking about moving away from drills is I'm also going to film a lot more because sometimes in the heat of the moment you just don't see if it's effective. So I'm going to watch them back. And then I thought that's going to be quite good for my webinars, for my website as well, because it's great talking around theory like I am now to you, but imagine being able to see it in real action, see the effect it has on players. And the webinar that I filmed last week about feedback and getting the player to feedback more, there's an amazing part in it. I think I might touch upon it last week, where I gave the player a choice. They had autonomy. They had a voice in how the drill, or use a word, drill, how the practice was set up, and you could see the difference in their body language. They got really excited, even though the practice was quite difficult, quite challenging. You could see the difference in the body language. And I think seeing things like that are more impactful because, again, because I've been talking about this stuff quite a lot on social media, there's a lot of coaches who don't understand it, and I appreciate that. And a lot of coaches will not see it from my lens. And I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm using my platform and my channels to document my coaching journey. My tennis coaching is what it is. It's my coaching journey. And if you don't agree with my philosophies and you have a closed mindset, then don't have to follow me. You don't have to follow me. Like, you don't have to be in part of my community and my channels. You don't have to agree with me either. And I'm more than happy to have open discussions around it as well. And it's interesting because I did an LTA coach forum this week. I'm working on doubles, and the practices that I had to present aren't my practices, they're the LTAs. And to be fair, quite enjoyable, quite fun. Obviously, some of them are based on Louis Kay's doubles framework. So I'm one of the world's greatest coaches. So obviously the practice design is pretty solid. And we did an activity was really focused on the net play and getting the players in the right position to intercept the ball. And it was all about perception, which was great because it was about reading the situation in front of you and getting yourself in the right position to hopefully touch the ball. And I was speaking to one of the coaches, and he would go, "Oh, this is great. This is really good. But the players need to learn how to volley first. Like, you can't do this drill if they can't hit the volley." And my question back was, well, what's a volley? Like, what type of volley are you talking about here? Because surely the type of volley you hit will depend on where you are on the court, where your opponents are, the type of ball you're giving. So you need to learn probably more about your positioning, perception, and looking at the environment in front of you before you know what type of volley to hit. And the coach sort of fired back, "Oh no, just a classic volley, just a classic chopper grip, step across the body and hit the ball out in front." Okay, great. And we've seen this drilled into players, haven't we? Where the coach will stand at the baseline. If you're lucky, most of them will stand in the midcourt and feed from the midcourt, and you're at the net because it's easy to feed, even though never in your life will someone hit the ball from the midcourt to you when you're volleying. Again, unrealistic practice design. So again, we've seen it drilled this way. So the coach will feed the volley and they'll get the player, and the coach will hit the ball to the player in the contact zone. The player will work on stepping in front and volleying. When in a match do you get the opponent hitting the ball into your contact zone at the net? I'm either trying to hit the ball past you. I'm more often than not trying to hit you. I'm hitting the ball at you with power and speed because I want to jam you up and win the point. I'm hitting the ball over your head. So whenever you hit that volley, and if I smash the ball at you, your volley is going to be reactive and you just got to get it and just touch it. If you've got a bit more time, you might do a two-step volley to close the distance. If you're volleying from the service line from a defensive position, you're going to volley differently than if you're on top of the net in an offensive position. So my question as a coach is, what's a volley? The volley only exists in your mindset of, maybe like we said last week, is it just a sales ploy to players? Oh, you need to learn how to volley before you can do any of that stuff. And there was a comment about one of my lessons this week at a club I work at, because I work in this very non-linear playing tennis way. It was suggested to some less experienced players to go, oh, don't go to those lessons. It's too advanced for you. You need to learn how to play the game first. You need to learn the basics. And it's mind-boggling how coaches, professional coaches, can think this way of, you need to learn isolated shots to play a dynamic game. It, again, goes back to what I said before, it makes no common sense. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot, because there's been a lot of pushback on some of my stuff on social media. Like I said before, I get that, because you only believe in what you believe, and sometimes it's very hard to change someone's belief. And I'm guessing, like, and I remember many years ago at Wirral Tennis Centre, and I'll shout out Mark Tennant from Inspired to Coach. And Mark came to Wirral, and it was when mini tennis just launched. And Mark came to Wirral with the mini tennis idea concept. And I was a young, very naive coach. And the more experienced coaches who I was around didn't buy into it, and because it was different. Oh, we don't need this red, orange, and green system. It's been fine for years. We've got short tennis and we've got the full tennis. And they really just dismissed Mark's ideas and philosophies out of hand. And sorry, Mark, but at the time I listened to them as well, because that was the environment and the culture that I was in. And now those ideas and philosophies are worldwide because of great stuff that Mark did, not only for the LTA, but for the ITF. And now mini tennis it's all over the world. But that group of coaches at Wirral dismissed it out of hand because it wasn't the norm. And I was thinking a lot about that this week. And I put out a Instagram and Facebook post this week of a quote that I've sort of been playing around with myself this week, of the players we coach, the players we work with today are coaches of tomorrow. And I think that's why everyone's so resistant to these modern ways. Because if you're a player and you move into coaching, you've been coached in a very specific way for 15, 20 years. That's all you know. That's your culture. That's all you know. That's all you grew up on. And you've had some success with that method. You've had some success. So then when you come across my tennis coaching and I'm talking about a completely opposite way, and I'm almost saying, well, the way you've been doing it's wrong. This is my way. Of course, you're going to go, what? I've been so successful. I've done it this way all for years. And it's because of the culture you've been grew up in. And I see it a lot on coach education still, when new trainee coaches come on my qualifications, and we'll discuss some maybe different ways of coaching than they currently are coached or their coaches use. And when they go back to their clubs, the feedback's always the same. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Oh, that's a load of rubbish. I've been doing this for 30 years and it works my way. And the classic one generally is, oh, I've produced loads of players this way. I've worked with such and such, and they went on to win this big tournament, and I did it that way, and it worked for them. So it must work for everybody. So I understand why there's barriers. I understand why there's conflict, and it's difficult to hear sometimes. And to quote Simon Sinek, the psychologist, sometimes if you get angry at someone's opinion, it's generally true. It normally speaks home truths. And just to sort of go back on a couple of those things about culture, and I think I mentioned it last week about the Spanish system, like the Spaniards. Yes, they do lots of basket drilling, but they play so many matches. So where's the skill really being developed there? It's probably in the matches. Those coaches who produce players, I produced this player and they went on to great things. The players produced themselves there, and I guarantee if you look at their match record, they've played a hell of a lot of tennis matches. They probably had a lot of coaching as well, and you probably had a minimal impact there. And the way I'm looking at it now is like, I've worked with some good players and they've gone on to achieve good things, and they've won some decent events, and they've achieved good rankings. I don't see me producing the player. I think the players done that on their own. But then I look at it and like, if you look at the thousands of players I've worked with over the years, how many have actually made pro level? I've worked on the LTA pathway for 20 years at various levels, whether it be county, regional level, RPDCs, or regional player development centres, high performance centres, county level performance centres. I've worked at that stage as a pathway for 20 odd years. How many players have I seen make a pro level? Liam Brodie was at Wirral. A couple of others have played ITF and maybe under 18 national champions and stuff like that. But how many have actually made it? So out of that thousands of players, how many didn't make it? And maybe if I used a different method of coaching, which I'm looking at now, later on in my 20 years into my career, maybe more may have made it. Maybe if I gave them the culture and the environment to grow and develop, maybe more made it. And I think if you look at that as a coaching industry as a whole, like if you look how many people play tennis, we're talking millions in Britain alone. But how many are actually playing to a good level? Minimal. So do our coaching methods actually generally work? And it's a conversation I've had in the past with head coaches. A previous head coach of mine was talking about, okay, player programs, and okay, these players need more hours on court. These players need more coaching. Because if you look at our best players, Steve, they've all got lots of coaching. They have lots of coaching hours. And I flipped on its head and I said, well, if you look at our best players, they're all competing more. So is it a fact they're learning in the practice environment more skill? Or is it just the fact that they're learning on the match court? My argument is they're learning on the match court. So we don't need more coaching. We just need to get our players playing more matches. And then you get the whole thing, yeah, but we're a business. We need coaching. We need court hire. We need income. And it goes back to that. It's about what fits the coach's narrative, what fits the coach's goals. It's not what's best for the player. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I'm moving away from drills, because I don't think it's best for the player. Yes, it may look good. It may look controlled. It may have a short-term benefit. But we talked about this again last week. Like when you isolate drills, yes, you have a short-term improvement, but the ability to transfer that skill into a more open, dynamic, problem-solving, decision-making environment is minimal. So why do we do it? And again, these are just questions that I'm looking at every day as a coach, because I'm striving to be better. I'm striving to give my players the best opportunity to fulfill their potential. I'm trying to make happier players. It's not because I'm trying to, someone said this week, I'm trying to build a cult. I'm not trying to build a cult. I'm just trying to help other coaches, because I spent 20 years. I now believe coaching completely backwards. And if any young coaches are watching this and can not waste 20 years coaching outdated methods, then that makes me happy. I'm not out there to make a name for myself or gain a huge social media following. That stuff doesn't really bother me. I'm just out there to try and help coaches, just like I'm trying out there helping players. And that being said, my vehicle for helping coaches with insights into sort of my journey really now, because I think what started off as a very much a coach education piece, my tennis coaching guild, is now becoming almost a documentation of my coaching journey. I want to share my successes, and then I want to share stuff that doesn't go right. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing these lives. Like I'm just being honest and putting out there, like, I don't have all the answers yet. I really don't. I'm still learning, and I'm still putting stuff out there. And I want other coaches to join me on this journey. And that's why I set up the My Tennis Coaching Guild, because I'm going to document my stuff. I'm going to video my lessons. I'm going to present my lessons to people and say, this is what I did. This is what I felt worked. This is what didn't work. And then in the live ones, I want people to chip in and say, you know what, I really like that, but I might have tried that a little bit differently, because then I can get better. And I say it on every coach education workshop that I deliver. And I said it yesterday, or sorry, this week when I was on the coach forum. I want to learn from the coaches more than they get from me. Because I think it was Bruce Lee said, like, you learn from people. You take the parts that resonate with you at that moment. You dismiss the parts that don't resonate, and then you just make them your own. And that's what I'm trying to do with my tennis coaching guild. And today it's an article week this week, so I've written an article on my beliefs around the disadvantages of drilling, the disadvantages of isolating drills and isolating techniques. So if you're a guild member, feel free to check that out. If you're not guild member, it's currently $9.97 a month, or $79.97 for a year, and you get access to all the webinars, you get access to all the articles, and you get access to me as well, and we can discuss and develop these ideas and philosophies together, because to me that's what tennis coaching is all about. And it's interesting doing the coach forums at the moment for the LTA. So coach forums, you're not familiar, is where we go to different counties or areas and all the coaches get together. And it's just interesting how many coaches do not want to share. They don't want to share information because they see everyone else's threats. And I'm like, but we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. Like, let's together work stuff out, and let's share best practice. And because people are so afraid to share, then that's when we have these methods that people push down onto coaches of this is how you do it, because coaches just don't want to share information. There we go. Quite a long live this week. These were only meant to be 15-20 minutes, but as you see, I'm on a journey. This is it. I'm sort of on my way of self-awareness and self-discovery, and I haven't quite got all the answers yet. And every single day I'm thinking about these things, and every time I step on court, I'm looking at how I'm delivering, and is this the most effective way, and am I using the right language? Am I setting up the right practices? And I'm more and more seeing the negative side of coaching, the dictatorial, the authoritative side. And my last story here before we go, and I was at a club doing a workshop this week, and I was watching a coach work, because I watch coaches all the time. I don't watch to be high and mighty and say, oh, I'm much better than that. I just watch to see, is there anything I can learn and take as my own, Bruce Lee style? But I'm really interested in these methods, and the coach I would definitely class as very traditional. And what was happening was that the players were playing points. So that was good. That was a positive. So, but it was match play week, the classic match play week, because it's the last week of term. So it's match play week. I'm like, oh my God, I hate match play week. Every week should be match play week. Anyway, so that was the first thing that I was sort of frustrated about. So at least they're playing tennis, they're playing matches, so at least I've got something to be like happy with. But as they're playing matches, the coach is just shouting stuff. Split step, crossover step, finish higher, finish lower. And it reminded me of a lion tamer. So every time the player would make a mistake, it was whoosh, and it was snapping the whip, and they were whipping them. And it was like, oh my God, like, how can that player have any sense of exploring or self-discovery or problem solving if every time they're touching the ball, you're giving them something different to think about? And it was so hard. And it happened as well on a training session which I was involved in, when a parent was shouting down to the kid. I had to go across and say, just pack it in. Let them play tennis. Oh, they need to work on X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, they're not going to learn by you shouting at them. And then they made a comment of, oh, they're not playing very well today. I think they're feeling really under the pressure. I said, well, maybe if you look at your own behavior, You may understand where that external pressure is coming from. And the reply was, they need to learn how to deal with that. And I'm like, oh, that's the real issue here, isn't it? It's not the fact that they can't do what you think they can do. Again, it's very easy standing there and telling someone how to play, get on court and do it yourself. But then also, if you keep cracking that whip, just look at any line that keeps getting hit with a whip. They don't look very happy. They don't look very like they're enjoying that experience. So there you go. Listen, I don't know if people enjoy these lives or not. I'm doing it in a bit of a selfish way. It's my way of documenting my journey, because it'd be interesting to look back in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years on this journey and sort of see where I was. And like I said before, if I'm trying to help anyone who is questioning their own coaching methods, and I think we should always question our coaching methods. And if we believe that we found the way, this is the way, Mandalorian style, yeah, this is the way to do it. This is the pathway. System is another word that I really can't stand at the moment. This is the system. This is our system. As if like tennis is that linear. If you do these 12 lessons, you'll be a player at the end of it. If someone's trying to sell you a tennis system, you might want to question that as well. But yeah, so there we go. Why I've stopped using drills. As always, leave your comments down below. Please do keep them respectful. Again, I keep getting trolled at the moment on Instagram. Shout out to my trolls. Peace. I don't know what I'm doing, building a cult. Great, because I'm not doing it to cause arguments. I'm causing it to, I'm doing it to develop some discussion. I'm doing it to try and help out some coaches. I'm trying to help that next generation of coaches, because if your mentor is a basket-fed technical expert, then you're going to become that basket-fed technical expert in 10 years. And we're just going to go round and round in circles. And no matter what the science tells us, and no matter what the research tells us, we'll still believe that the 1930s way of coaching is the right way. If anyone's ever interested in joining in on one of these lives, so any tennis coaches on here who have the same philosophy as me, or maybe the opposing philosophy, drop me a DM. It'd be quite nice actually to get on and actually talk to people rather than just talking to myself. So if anyone is interested, again, safe space. You may completely disagree with me, which is fine. Then it'd be great to just sort of have a discussion, because that's how we learn. Anyway, head over to mytenniscoaching.com. If you are enjoying the content that I'm putting out and you would like to support me in my journey and hopefully be part of the journey with me as well, and we can have this journey together, please do consider My Tennis Coaching Guild. Just click the white button at the very top. Next week, I won't be live because I'm delivering another LTA coach forum in Hertfordshire. So if you're in Hertfordshire or there around and you want to actually come and speak to me face to face, please do. It's quite nice these days when you go to workshops that people do come up to me and go, "Are you My Tennis Coaching?" I go, "Yeah, that's me." And then they sort of have a chat about stuff that I say, and it's great. And I'll always have time to talk to you. So it is always good to see you face to face. So next week, I will be recording the webinar. And I think next week I want to talk about player pathways, because I've got players at the moment who are on the player pathway. And I don't think the word pathway is very right. I'm kind of now thinking about, are pathways the right way? Because they're linear, and I'm now thinking completely non-linear. So maybe we'll discuss pathways next week. Right, I have been trying to sign off the last 10 minutes, but I keep rambling on because I'm just so into this at the moment, and it's great. Have a great week, and I will speak to you all again, hopefully soon, or I'll just rabbit on to myself. Either way, I'll see you on here next week.